Only mode.
Hi guys, welcome to Making the Call Tracking for PPC. This is a joint webinar hosted by Hannafin Marketing and Ifbyphone. Presenting is me, Amanda Westbrook-Walter of Hannafin Marketing, and Angelo of Ifbyphone. I'm not even going to try and say your last name, Angelo. I'll let you do that.
No problem.
So I am an account manager at Hannafin Marketing. I spoke at SMX East just recently. Also have spoken at HeroConf. And Angelo, do you want to kind of go over your role?
Sure. My name is Angelo Sakvanas. I work here at Ifbyphone. I am the search marketing team lead and product manager of our SourceTrack application, which is our call tracking application for keyword level call tracking and just marketing channels in general.
Great. So the topic today is making the call. So it's going to be all about call tracking. I'll be tackling kind of more of the PPC manager agency sort of point of view, and Angelo will be really tackling the technical point of view specifically in accordance to Ifbyphone and what they do. So if you want to join the conversation, if you want to make any comments or you have questions at any point during the webinar, just jump onto Twitter and use the hashtag ThinkPPC. You can also use the webinar question box to send this question, so kind of two ways to join the conversation today, and we hope to hear from you. So to get all the webinar started, we just kind of want to see who's out there listening and get you guys participating. So if you could just answer how long you've been in PPC. So your options are going to be less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or 5+ years. Myself, I would fall into the 1 to 3 years, kind of more on the 3-year side. However, Angela, how long have you been doing what you're doing?
Looking at this, I'm in the D column, I guess. I didn't realize it's been that long, but now that I had to think about the question, it's been over 5 years. So.
Wow, a lot of experience. Looks like most people were with me in the 1 to 3, and then runner-up 5+ years. So got a lot of variance and experience here today. That's great. So one more poll question. We just want to know how you guys manage your PPC accounts. So your options are going to be that you manage it yourself, that you're part of a team that manages it, that you outsource your account management, and that you're rethinking how your account is managed. So being part of an agency, I would say I'm part of a team that manages it. So obviously an agency is a huge team that manages all of our accounts. And I guess, Angelo, for you, probably the same sort of thing?
Yeah, at this point, I am a part of a 2 to 3 person team. My experience and my ability to sort of help strategize and launch new campaigns more so is what I do here at Ifbyphone than really the day-to-day management anymore. But I serve multiple roles here, so it's definitely a smaller team. Great.
And it looks like most people out there are part of a team, followed up by managing it themselves. And I know that when you're managing it yourself, like a lot of my clients did before we took over their account, they're very invested. So I'm glad you came today to find out about call tracking.
Great.
Oh, we have one more actually. Sorry, so the last one was the last one, and I was incorrect. We have one last poll before we get into our content. Do you provide a phone number in your PPC app, any page for people to call? So we're just kind of wondering where you guys are at right now in your call tracking efforts, and this is kind of a basic setup question. So it'd be yes, no, or not yet. We're planning to, and obviously Angelo and I will both have varying answers. But for me, it just depends on the client. A couple of our clients do, and some of our clients don't. It just kind of depends on their size and what their industry is. But hopefully we'll get a lot of you out there that have started thinking about how to track your phone calls. 80% are yes, so 17% not yet, but we're planning to. So hopefully we'll give some insight into the people who have said yes, so you can kind of find out more of what you can do and get information. And for the people not yet, but planning to, hopefully we'll get you started.
Okay. So I'm going to start really quickly here with just an overview of what call tracking is for those that don't know. As Amanda mentioned, some of you guys are thinking about using phone numbers in your SEO or, I'm sorry, your paid search campaigns. At Ifbyphone, we do a lot of content marketing. We do a lot of various marketing efforts, just like a lot of businesses out there. We're trying to bring in, leads and business through our marketing efforts, and we rely on the phone call as a conversion channel for our potential customers, because people have a lot of questions about the things that we do, because we do quite a few things, and I'm sure that's something that you guys can relate to out there with your individual businesses or your clients' businesses. And so basically, call tracking is giving a unique phone number to the variety of sources that you're using to do your marketing, so that when you get a phone call, you can attribute that lead or that sale to that specific marketing channel. So you're going to gain insight into specifically what is driving calls, what is working for your business to drive calls into the business, and maybe what's not, so that you can sort of, trim out the fat and cut out some of the stuff that's not working. So for an example, at the end of this webinar, you'll see a phone number that is a unique tracking number to this webinar. So when somebody calls Ifbyphone based on this webinar, we'll know it was the Hannafin Ifbyphone call tracking webinar that drove the phone call. And we'll get into some more detail about tracking with paid search in particular and some other things that we do as well.
Great. It's good information to have, especially for the people who are just planning to get into call tracking and maybe still wondering exactly what call tracking can entail. So this next slide I just wanted to talk about for the people who are really just starting to consider if they may or may not need call tracking, or maybe call tracking is a new idea to them and that's why they're listening in today. So thinking about if you need call tracking or you don't need call tracking is really just a basic question of how do I use my call information that I get. If you have calls coming in that are producing sales or producing leads for you, and you're not 100% sure where every call is coming from, then you need call tracking. And obviously this is something that can be hard to determine the number of sales or leads coming from your calls. It would be something you have to work with, either if you have a call center, trying to kind of gauge the volume there. But really the bottom line comes down to, if you care about having your phone calls and you care about what's happening with them, then you should use call tracking. And then this next slide, I just kind of talk about what level of call tracking you might need. There's lots of different levels of call tracking. So I kind of broke it into 3 basic levels. So one number for each account would be like a super basic, very cheap and very easy to set up level of call tracking. And I've seen this before, where they'll just have, a number for their AdWords account, a number for their Bing account, maybe a number for their Facebook account. And really this only is a viable option if you lump all your leads and sales together. So it doesn't matter what the sale was or what the lead was, it just matters if someone called, and it doesn't matter like what campaign it came from or what kind of product it was, none of that matters. And you just lump everything all together, then that could be a viable option for you. If you have no strict CPA or return on ad spend goals, just volume goals, if you don't really care how much it costs or what kind of revenue it's bringing into you, you don't need to track that kind of stuff. It's just about gaining volume, then that could be a viable option for you. If your account is more top level with few in-depth optimizations, then people making those in-depth optimizations might not need to know exactly where the calls are coming from, so that could be a viable option for you. I would say that this is probably not a likely scenario. This is how you're managing your account, but if you are, then it's definitely a viable option for you. So kind of in between the two right and left levels here, I put one number for each ad group or campaign, because it's something that if you start to kind of match up with the list of criteria there on the left side of the screen, but you want something a little more in-depth, then you can kind of go in the middle. But I really recommend for almost everyone that you do keyword level tracking. And that's really important, specifically if you meet the criteria here on the right. So if you have separate lead goals or separate lead types, if you have different sale values or types, obviously if you sell retail or e-commerce, then you're going to have so many different products that it's going to matter what keyword is selling what. And then if you do lots of in-depth optimization, so if you have an agency or a specific PPC person who's doing lots of really in-depth optimizations, you're going to want information down to the keyword level to be able to make the right optimizations. And then again, if you have strict return on ad spend or CPA goals, to really be able to measure if something's making the cut or not in terms of your goals for those two metrics, you really need keyword level tracking. So I recommend that for everyone to get keyword level tracking, but if you're just kind of dipping your feet in the water and you measure up more with the left and the right side of how your account's being managed, you can totally start with a more basic setup.
And just one thing to add there, what Amanda's point was at the end there is perfect, and that's what we see quite a bit here, especially with agency customers or businesses that you know, aren't necessarily sure at all about what they're doing with the phone today. Like they have a single phone number, their main business phone number, it's the same one they put in all their local business listings, and they have no idea. It's on their website, it's everywhere, and they have no idea at all what drives the phone calls. They're not ready to jump with full speed into the keyword level call tracking piece, or maybe the agency that's managing it for them can't necessarily sell them on the more comprehensive setup of doing keyword level call tracking. So you start with sort of the one-to-one ratio, what we talk about here at Ifbyphone is one-to-one call tracking, to the campaign level or the ad group level or even just the medium. So you have, you know, Google PPC versus Bing or Facebook, Bing, Google, or just all paid search versus organic search, whatever level of tracking that they're comfortable with, just to first understand how much is coming in from the phone from these different sources. And then you can track down more granular to a specific, you know, piece of collateral or a specific keyword that's driving the calls to the business. So I'm going to touch on here, you know, something that I think we probably all kind of have a hunch about or feel about, that, you know, what type of leads are most valuable to sales folks. This can be a larger sales team or a smaller, you know, sales team that's selling a variety of products or services. You know, you get a lot of, there's a lot of channels now where people can reach your business: social media, your website, the phone, emails, you meet them out in person. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And I think this data here in front of you shows that when you get a telephone call from somebody, when someone actually reaches out to your business, that is one of the most qualified channels that they could reach out. That's one of the most valuable ways for someone to reach out to a business, to show you that they're interested in what you're offering. They're interested in the product or service you're selling, and they want to talk to you because they initiated that contact of picking up the phone and dialing you. So understanding where those types of leads come from, and this is the point we're going to try and hammer home this entire webinar, is understanding where the most valuable leads are coming from is the best way to optimize your marketing and your ad spend and all the different channels that you're marketing into right now. So it's something to keep in mind, and this is very good information to show you guys.
So one really key thing in terms of how I use call tracking, so when I'm doing call tracking for a client, is integrating call tracking call extensions. So it's really important to set up click-to-calls for mobile when you're tracking a number for proper mobile PPC optimization. So if you're doing any kind of mobile PPC, which I kind of feel like if you're not, you're going to be dead in the water here shortly if you're not already, because it's so crazy. The number of smartphones, people signing for smartphones last year was greater than the number of people born. So I really hope you're taking advantage of that and doing some mobile PPC. So if you have tracking numbers that you purchase through call tracking, definitely set up your click-to-calls with call extensions for that, for your mobile PPC. That way you can see what, you can really track what numbers are coming from mobile specifically, and make sure those are specific static numbers. So assign those specific ad groups. That way you can have insight into your ad group extension performance specifically for search or for mobile. And then also, I would suggest, since that can get kind of costly, especially if you have a giant account, that picking the ad groups with the most mobile click-to-call contacts, so you can just kind of, before you were using call tracking, or just set it up for a little bit to see which ad groups really get the most traction there, and just use the kind of top clicked or the top performing ad extensions to use for these static numbers. You can really be tracking where the most volume is coming from if you don't have the budget to really necessarily set it up for every single one.
And then piggybacking right here on Amanda's point, calls are extremely important in mobile search. I think that's really sort of a given. I mean, Google has done things to make it easier for people to reach out and call with call extensions and enhanced campaigns to ensure that you're showing your ads across these different mobile devices in a more uniform manner. Responsive website design is coming and is really becoming I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's really becoming something that people are adopting as a way to cater the user experience on websites and even e-commerce sites or mobile apps to those mobile web visitors. It goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. I mean, if I can click a button on my mobile device that I'm browsing on and looking at your information about your business or your services, and click a button and automatically generate a call, it makes my life a whole lot easier than having to, you know, go back to the phone and dial the number based on what I'm looking at on a website. People have a device in their hands now all day, every day, and it's something that they're using to reach out and contact the businesses. Here you'll see 70% of mobile searchers call a business directly from the search results. Again, a call is one of the best types of leads that you can get because the people that are willing to pick up the phone and call you directly are interested in what you're offering. 61% of mobile searchers say it's important that businesses give them a phone number to call. They want to be able to reach out to you, and as I said before, we're making it so much easier for them to be able to reach out to you on mobile devices nowadays. 33% of mobile searchers said that they would be less likely to refer a brand to others if it did not offer an option to call. People want to talk to people when they're buying something. It obviously depends on the industry or the the products or services that you're selling, but in most cases, for larger purchases or for more in-depth services or products that you're offering, people want to talk to somebody to get more information about what it is before they make that purchase. And maybe they just need assistance in making the purchase as well.
Yeah, and I would chime in to say that just with what I see from my clients, that's super vital with industries like any kind of like legal counsel or real estate, like you said, larger purchases, more in-depth sales links, those are going to be super vital to have the phone number there for people to call.
Right. And also, it's worth noting that in most cases, those industries are more expensive to run paid search for. So again, you want to understand that return on ad spend more so at that point than maybe some of the smaller niche industries that are selling a single product, or maybe it's an e-commerce shop where they don't do a lot of paid search, or maybe they do. It just really depends on the individual instance. But for PPC and call tracking, and this is obviously one of the biggest reasons why we're all here today, I don't think there's anything more important in my mind as somebody here who does marketing for a business and as somebody who has worked in the agency world in the past, in letting my clients or customers, or in this case, stakeholders in what I'm doing, my bosses here, letting them understand more so what I'm doing is working, because they rely on the phone call as a way to generate that business that we're trying to drum up for them. So when I'm running paid search and I'm putting my budgets in place for the next quarter or for the next month, I want them to understand exactly why I think we should spend our money here. And if I can go to them and show them exactly what generates phone calls and turns into leads, which I'll show you guys a little bit more here in depth as we move forward in the deck here, I can get their their blessing, and they're okay to go ahead and continue to spend money in the places that I know we're turning around leads. I know we're getting that return on ad spend because I can see the data, and it's proven to me, so to speak, in a way that's going to let me sort of monetize my efforts and say, this is what works and this is what doesn't. So it's important information to understand down to the keyword level, as you can see here, and as Amanda touched on earlier, is when you do call tracking down to the keyword level, you understand for every single click that you pay for, how much money you make back for every sale that turns into revenue for your business. It is really that simple. I mean, your understanding in AdWords is, I pay this much for every click, I get this many clicks a day, these are the ads that work, these are the ad groups that work, and you can see all that data. Now what you need to do is take it another step further and understand what happens once that person is interacting with my business over the phone, and how do I tie that information, that revenue, that sale that happened, all the way back to that click that drove the call. So here's just one simple example of what a report would look like from Ifbyphone. And again, there's a lot of other things that you can do with our data, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. But just to give you guys some insight into what I was just referring to, this is a list of all the different types of campaigns we're running right now. And you'll see on the left side under the source, we have it broken out by publisher, in this case AdWords, and then the individual campaign based on the services we offer. You'll see how many visits, that is, how many times we displayed a phone number on the web page, how many calls came in, how many of those calls were from unique caller IDs, the average duration of the call, and then the conversion rate, which is the difference between the displays or visits and the unique calls. The beauty of this report, and you know, I can't really show you it right now because it's in a deck, but if you were to click into any one of those hyperlink sources, you're going to see a breakout of ad group and the same information, visits, calls, unique calls, and then clicking in again will show you the individual keywords that cause phone numbers to display on your site and to generate phone calls. Again, this is just within our interface. We're going to talk a little bit later on here, actually in the next coming slides here, about integrating this data into Google Universal Analytics or Analytics, and also into your CRM if you're using one. Okay. So here's an example of one of our CRM integrations. It's really what we find is one of our more popular ones. We've integrated with Salesforce. A lot of our customers use Salesforce as a way to manage all of their customers and their business operations. And we give them the ability to see the call data inside of Salesforce, but they can then funnel that data through all the way through their sales process. So we show you a call that generates, the information that generated a phone call, the web visit, the keyword, the ad group, all that stuff. And then you would then pass that information through from the lead stage to you know, the account stage when they actually became a paying customer of yours. And then you go back and run these reports on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis to see where your leads are coming from, both web-based forms and other sign-ups and stuff like that, along with phone calls. You now have this unified data of where all of your leads are coming from and what happens next after they've been turned into leads. So you can see here that you have leads, then you have opportunities, then you have new accounts, which is 3 stages within a sales process in this case, in this example. So you're going to be able to see which leads come in and then which ones tend to convert better down the road. In this case, you can see where paid search was 9% of leads created, 15% turned in, or I'm sorry, paid search made up 15% of the opportunities. But then down here, you'll see that 8% of paid search turned into new accounts from after being an opportunity. So that it's that type of information, and then again, you can get more granular with this data and see it based on phone calls versus web form submissions versus whatever other type of conversion channel you have. Here's an example of seeing the data inside of analytics, in this case, Universal Analytics. Universal Analytics, as I'm sure most of you have heard or have seen at this point, is something that we're all going to be switched to sooner or later as soon as Google's done doing its migration. Many of you may have already begun the process of switching, or many of you may have been on the public beta all this time. Ifbyphone is still the only call tracking provider today to have integrated with Universal Analytics, and it gives us a unique opportunity as a way to view our data. You can see here that our phone call data, Ifbyphone calls, and then you see a column here for phone calls, is treated like any other dimension or metric inside of analytics. So what you'll see here is, unlike the classic analytics integrations that you'll see with most of the other call tracking providers and even Ifbyphone, which is you had to sort of use goals as a way to get call data into analytics, whereas Universal Analytics allows you to actually, with an API, get call data into Universal and treat it like a real metric inside of analytics. So if you rely on analytics as a way to sort of manage all the marketing information that you have and seeing what's working and what's not, you can have call data right inside of analytics as well. One other cool feature of analytics is, or Universal Analytics in this case, is content experiments. Because of the way that we've integrated with Universal Analytics, you can use phone call data as the determining factor in the content experiments that you're running. So if you wanted to run A/B tests within Google Analytics, you could run A/B tests and use phone calls as the determining factor of which page is converting better for you. Whereas normally you're stuck with some event like a web form submission or other conversion channel or video plays, whatever that desired action was. So making phone calls that determining factor, if you rely on phone calls, is is an important thing. One other unique feature of Ifbyphone, and I'll just cover this quickly. Let's say you rely on web forms or you get a lot of web forms, but responding to your call or responding to the web visitor is something that you struggle with as a business. Ifbyphone offers a service, we call it My Lead Responder, where every time a web form is filled out on your website, it automatically generates a call to one of your reps or one of your agents or one of your sales folks, and then turns around and automatically connects that call to the person who just filled out the web form. This ensures that you're talking to the people who are interested in your products and services as quickly as possible at the same time that they're submitting that web form. So something interesting. You'll see here the statistic at the bottom that we have here. A lead is 22 times more likely to convert if contacted within 5 minutes of filling out a web form. So speed of connecting with the people who are interested in your business, just like the ones who are willing to pick up the phone and call you, is the most important thing when they're looking to get a hold of your business.
So this kind of just circling back to making sure that you're tracking and getting really all the data that you can for call tracking down to the keyword level. So it's kind of reiterating just the same points that we've been making. Tracking at the keyword level is super important, like we've been saying, just to make sure that you can actually see what types of leads or what types of sales and what's actually happening and what kind of search queries are resulting in the most calls. And it's also really important when we're doing optimizations with PPC managers to be able to see what the actual cost per acquisition or the actual return on ad spend is, because we could be generating a lot of phone leads or phone revenue that we're not tracking in AdWords without call tracking. So like I said, you just get the raw search query data, you get what the keyword was matched or what keyword was matched to that raw search query, you get the source, you get the keyword type for each call, and you can just count that as a conversion when measuring leads, and that just integrates your PPC data for optimization. So just reiterating that and making sure that that's really being driven home as a super strong point from this webinar.
So this is a question that we ask our customers at Ifbyphone all the time, and we talk about a lot. Is with marketing automation software, and even just with web forms in general, you have the ability to sort of score the people that are filling out your forms and the people that, in the end, you're passing on to your sales team. The goal here is obviously to make sure that your sales team is talking to the most qualified people to turn a sale around, or to turn a sign up around, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. Now, the question we ask here a lot is that Ifbyphone is, if you're scoring your web leads with either marketing automation or web forms, why are you not taking a little bit of time to score the phone calls that are coming into your business? Because there's a lot of reasons that people would call a business. You have support, obviously sales. Maybe they just have a generic question about the business. So Ifbyphone offers our IVR system, which is interactive voice response. And I won't spend a ton of time on this, but it gives you the opportunity to ask just a few qualifying questions to anybody who calls into your business to first find out what it is they're interested in, right? Do you need to talk to somebody in support? Cool, we'll send you right to somebody in support, right? This is also for caller experience. You don't want somebody who needs help with a product or service that you sold talking to a sales rep, right? You want them talking to someone who can actually help them and give them support. So Ifbyphone offers this to pretty much any of our call tracking customers. It's in the same package that we offer, and we find it extremely valuable to the customers that are concerned about, like I said, quickly getting a hold and routing those calls to the right people. Take the support example out of it for a second. This is also going to make sure that you get all calls to the correct sales folks. So if you have specific sales folks who are maybe more senior or more junior than others, or maybe they specialize in specific products, you can qualify that caller and find out exactly who they need to speak to before they're actually ever connected to a person, and get them to the right sales rep or the right representative on the business side immediately. So it's an extremely helpful tool when you're trying to, like I said, turn calls into leads or sales as quickly as you can.
And just to drive that point home, kind of more from a PPC manager standpoint, IVRs are really important. Like Angelo said, they can allow the caller to self-select what type of lead or sale they are, so you can ask kind of upfront qualifying questions to figure out if it's going to be really valuable lead or non-valuable lead. Like Angelo said, you can send the more valuable leads to a more senior person. And it also just gives the operator insight to what the caller is going to be asking about. So you can set up a list of questions that kind of just gives a really good sense of what the caller is asking about or calling in about. Again, you can just have the operator prepared with information or wrap them to different operators that have different sets of information or specialize in different aspects of your business. And it just shows the VVC Manager what kind of calls are being generated without listening to every single call. So if I can go through and see that there's 5 options in the IVR, and I know that 3 normally result in really great quality leads or sales for us, I can go through and look for this specifically instead of listening to a call and seeing what happened on the call. So IVR in terms for PPC managers is also super important, not only for the people running the business so that they can better route their calls and give better customer service, but also for the PPC managers.
And here's just some examples of sort of rules that we use to route calls today at Ifbyphone, and some of our customers use these types of rules as well. As I mentioned, you can route to an agent's all their different phones. If they're remote, they're working in the office, they're out in the field, their cell phone, you can send it to a Skype phone or a soft phone on their machine. Basically, being able to get the calls to the reps wherever they're working from. You can ring agents simultaneously or sequentially. So again, if you have a group of agents and it's nondescript and it doesn't really make a difference which one gets the call, you can ring all of them at once to make sure that the first person who's available gets the call. You can route the top performing agents first, as we mentioned. Route based on business hours. We have scheduled-based routing available, so you can send the calls to an answering service overnight or the weekends, or to a voicemail box, whatever it is that you'd like to do. Again, route by campaign. So if it's a specific set of services you're selling or products that fit into a specific paid search campaign need to be handled by a specialist, you could route those calls and set that routing in advance, so that those people, those specific reps, will always get those types of phone calls. And again, route by product line, same thing really. If you have a variety of marketing channels, but it's all about a specific type of product, and only a handful of reps are set up to handle that product, you can send all those calls to those specific folks. So one last little note, and this is, again, some tips that we offer anybody that we talk to here at Ifbyphone, and this goes back to Amanda's original point of what type of call tracking you need. Not all call tracking vendors are created equal. So the things that you want to ask when you're talking to a call tracking vendor or a call tracking company are, do they offer keyword level call tracking? Because that full attribution down to the keyword level, as the marketer, is really what we're after. So even if you start off with that one-to-one level, the goal would to eventually fully understand what drives calls to your business, and that means going all the way down to the keyword level. So it's important to know that they do that. In most cases as well, you want to be able to track calls from organic search as well as paid search. Again, because those are usually calls that you want to track and understand as well as paid search, if not more so. Do they offer customizable session time? So we really didn't get into the nuts and bolts of this, but basically we offer we display a unique phone number for a specific amount of time to every web visitor that hits your website, and the ability to customize how long that phone number is reserved for each unique visitor. That's something that's important to a lot of businesses, because people take different amount of times to convert based on the product or service you're selling. Negative keyword matching, again, is something that we offer here at Ifbyphone, and it's just the ability to say, hey, for this group of keywords, I don't want to display a tracking number. So the example I like to use for our customers here at Ifbyphone is branded search. As the PPC person, as the online marketer person for your business or for your client, you may or may not be charged with driving brand traffic. And if you're not being asked to help drive brand traffic, then you don't want to waste or provision call tracking phone numbers for branded search terms. You want them to see the main phone number, the regular business phone number that they see. Real-time reporting is important. You guys get real-time data inside of analytics and inside of AdWords, and that call data in real time is important as well. We talked about customizable phone routing options once the call comes in. We talked about integration with web analytics, CRMs, and bid management technologies. And the other thing that you guys need to note is support from the call tracking vendors. So here at Ifbyphone, we have all Google AdWords and analytics certified specialists helping with call tracking. We have a dedicated group of specialists that help with our call tracking customers to ensure that not only are we well versed in our actual product, but we understand the world you're working in when you're trying to set this up. So these are some important questions to ask.
So I just wanted to go ahead and let you guys know that we're going to be doing some Q&A, so stick around. A lot of you have been asking questions, and we're really excited to answer them. So stick around just a minute. We'll start getting to those questions and hopefully provide some really good answers for you. If you still have one that you've been waiting to get answered and has been answered, feel free to reach out on hashtag PPC or through the webinar question chat system. But just so you guys know, if you need help managing your PPC accounts, you can go ahead and let us know. If you're interested, you can have a free solutions blueprint. So it's just for accounts with $20,000 or more in ad spend per month. And Hannafin Marketing will go through your account and provide you a really awesome roadmap for what's going on in your account and how you can fix it and how we would really suggest you implement best practices. You can also save $250 on Ifbyphone's call tracking. So if Ifbyphone sounds like something that you really want to try out, you can save $250 today. If you answer that on the quick poll, you could get both if you like and you qualify for the first one, $20,000 more a month in ad spend. And you can also just do neither. So whatever you guys want to answer in your poll, feel free to take advantage of these awesome offerings that are not available all the time, only through our webinar for those of you listening today. So obviously we won't give you the answers to that one, guys, in case you were wondering waiting for that to pop up. So the live Q&A, I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to go through some of the user questions here that we got during the webinar. This is a really interesting question that hopefully Angelo can answer. It's more of an SEO-based question than PPC, so it's not quite my area of specialty. One listener wanted to know, how does call tracking conflict with NAP consistency, so the name, address, and phone number consistency that they recommend, that Google recommends people make sure that they have a really good consistency with for SEO? Is there a way that conflicts with that or can hurt your SEO rankings?
That's a question I hear quite a bit, and it's absolutely a great question. There's a couple of different things that we do. Well, I'm sorry, there's one thing specifically that we do with Ifbyphone is in our call tracking script, it is a JavaScript-based. Well, I'm sorry, so this is the dynamic number insertion we're talking about. One-to-one call tracking, obviously, on a web page, if you're hard-coding phone numbers on the site, is usually something that Google can crawl and index. So if you go back to Amanda's original example of a single phone number for a single group of landing pages that belong to a campaign or a specific medium, Google will see those phone numbers, and that can conflict with the name, address, phone number. So usually, and this is the way I do it, and Amanda can chime in as well, I don't necessarily allow my landing pages that are strictly for paid search to get indexed into organic listings. I don't know if that's necessarily best practice for everybody in the industry. It's just the way I've always done it. So Google wouldn't necessarily see those one-to-one phone numbers. But if you are not, no indexing those landing pages from paid search, and you are letting Google sort of crawl those one-to-one phone numbers, then that could cause issue with the name, address, phone number. Now, with dynamic number insertion, which is what we would do to track the keyword level, that is a dynamic number insertion JavaScript, piece of JavaScript that actually rotates out phone numbers on the web page. Google can see JavaScript as far as when they're calling your website. They cannot necessarily yet index the content that is being put out by that JavaScript. So the short answer is Google doesn't actually see your dynamic phone number as of yet. And we also have a way to sort of put in your main phone number so that Google does still see the presence of that on the page. Without getting too technical and in all the ways that we can help do that, the short answer is dynamic number insertion is still safe for the name, address, phone number, and making sure that Google sees that consistently across your website. But if you're hard coding different phone numbers across different web pages on your site and you're allowing Google to crawl those pages, you could have an issue. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I'll go ahead and tackle this next user question. So this wanted to know if there are any call tracking systems that integrate well with AdWords for more in-depth automated tracking. And I will go ahead and say that the way that I integrate call tracking with my AdWords accounts is that if you have any call tracking system that integrates with analytics, which I would say most of them do, Ifbyphone being the only one that integrates with universal analytics at the moment, you can create a goal type for conversion from your call tracking. So if somebody just uses that information in analytics and creates a goal, then you can import that goal to your AdWords account, and you'll see that goal tracking as a conversion, and you could just segment by conversion tracking name or tracking purpose, and you'll see that specific goal as a phone call or phone lead. So the only way that I know the best way to do that is to track from analytics into your AdWords in terms of importing your goal types as a conversion. Angelo, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's exactly correct. Like I said, with analytics, you can integrate any of that phone call data back into AdWords via that goal import, like you just laid out. Great.
Let's see here. We have so many good questions. Here's another question that wants to know specifically, what's the best way to use Ifbyphone in retargeting campaigns?
So really, again, I don't want to necessarily go too technical or in depth, but basically you're going to assign a different set of phone numbers, a different pool of phone numbers to your retargeting campaign. You can also do it the way that Amanda sort of laid out. If you just want to first understand whether or not retargeting is driving calls, you would assign a single number to do that. We offer a way, either by controlling the landing page that you're showing your retargeting visitors, or by tagging the URLs and the destination URLs, by tagging the destination URLs of your retargeting ads with a specific tag that our JavaScript would recognize to control the display of that phone number. So if you want to understand not only that the call is coming from retargeting, but that the call is coming from retargeting and that the ad they saw was on this website, you could do that with a pool of numbers dedicated to your retargeting campaign. But if you simply just wanted to know how many calls are coming from retargeting, you could use a single number, and every visitor that came to the site from retargeting would see the same phone number, allowing you to get a call count based on your retargeting campaign.
A great answer. And sorry, I'm going to actually ask you another one, Angelo, because I feel like this is a really good question. What happens in dynamic number insertion when a customer writes the number down and calls back times over the next few days? Will the number still work, and how will it track?
So, and that's these are really good questions. So there's a couple of different things, and I can talk about this stuff all day, guys, so I promise not to talk your ear off. But Ifbyphone is unique from most call tracking providers in the sense that when you provision a number from Ifbyphone, that number belongs to you. That number stays in your account, and that number is a part of the same campaign that you have configured it to be a part of. We do not rotate phone numbers in and out of your account or in and out of your different campaigns. So if I see a phone number for PPC from a business that I want to call, and I call that business, and 3 days later I call that number back because it's saved in my cell phone, that number will still connect. It'll still connect to the same business. And Ifbyphone will attribute that secondary call within 1 week up to back to the original keyword that I searched when I clicked on the ad. If I write the number down and you delete the number out of the campaign, at that point, obviously, Ifbyphone can't necessarily route that call to your business anymore. So we don't recommend that you add a bunch of numbers and remove a bunch of numbers. But if you have a number in your account and you don't delete it, that number will always be in your account and it'll always connect to the business.
Great. Yeah, that was a really good question. People are asking great questions. Keep them up if you have them. We're still answering for the next 15 minutes. So here's a really good question. So what would you suggest, and I'll go ahead and answer this one, Angelo, I'll give you a break. What would you suggest for call tracking when a company has a well-branded phone number, such as 1-800 their name? And in that instance, it kind of mirrors what Angelo was saying about using hard-coded numbers for the SEO stuff we were talking about earlier. So if you have a branded phone number like 1-800, your company's name or something like that that's very well known, the chances are people are calling that number because they already know who you are. They're probably necessarily needing to be directed back to PPC or anything like that. So if you're trying to use PPC-specific call tracking, or even email-specific call tracking, or Facebook-specific call tracking, or whatever you're using it for, any other digital media marketing that you're doing, you just use specific landing pages so that that phone number is specific to that source. So people coming from that source will see your call tracking phone number. They may not see your branded phone number, but the most important thing is that they're calling you and you're tracking where they're calling from. So your branded phone number, so put it on your website. So if people go to your website just directly, they'll still get your branded phone number if that's an important thing to you. Obviously, there's a chance that you could be missing a couple of things that track back for people, who will go from PPC to direct and then call from direct, so it'll be harder to see. But if it's really important to you to keep that branded phone number, I would suggest just using dedicated landing pages with your tracking number. Let's see. Looking through the user questions, here's a really good one for you, Angelo. I should have any information on this. How could you assign revenue back to a call?
Yeah, I saw that one earlier. I was waiting for it. That's an excellent question, and that's honestly something that is really important to me as somebody who's been doing call tracking now for a while. Obviously, it's a product that I manage here at Ifbyphone. Attributing it back to the revenue is really the most important thing, because as we mentioned, there's a lot of different levels of types of leads and how qualified those leads are and how likely they are to turn into a purchase. And even, as I mentioned, because we offer a bunch of different products here at Ifbyphone, what type of purchases they end up making. So attributing lead sources and calls back to revenue is important. Now we use, as I mentioned before, Salesforce. So our data is integrated into Salesforce at every time we create a record in Salesforce. So if a call comes in or a web form comes in, we know exactly what drove that person into Salesforce. From that point, it just follows our regular sales process, right? But we move the data that we sent in about the call or even about the web form back to every stage of the sale, so that when they finally close and we're attributing revenue inside of Salesforce to that record, to that account, we can go back all the way to the beginning and see this account was created based on a call from a PPC ad that was a click off of the keyword of so-and-so. We can then go back and say, we spent this much money in this 6-month period or in this 3-month period on this keyword, right? We can then see how much revenue was driven from our Salesforce instance back to that keyword click and see whether or not the return on ad spend was worth it, and whether or not that's something we'd like to continue to do. If you're not using Salesforce, Ifbyphone has an API available to get all of our data out in real time into any system that you'd like. If it's not something we're currently integrated with, it's probably either going to be on our list shortly as a potential integration, or it's something that you could do with yourself, or maybe hiring a freelance developer to help you build if you don't have the API chops to get our data out and put it into any system or database that you'd like.
That's a great answer. Here's one that I'll go ahead and take a stab at. So this one wanted to know if call extensions have any effect on keyword level tracking when using dynamic call tracking numbers. So if a customer calls a number off an extension but never hits the landing page, is that keyword or call tracked? So the answer is yes, sort of. So if you use a call extension and somebody calls that number, but they don't actually go to your landing page or anything like that, so what that does is track back to the call extension. So not necessarily a keyword level like it would with the dynamic tracking, but it will lead back to that call extension. So I'll know that I have these static numbers assigned to my call extensions, and if somebody called that static number, they obviously got that call extension. So that would be really dependent upon how many keywords you have in that ad group. If you are well managed, you only have like 5 or so keywords, then you can be pretty confident that it's one of those keywords, and hopefully they're all performing about the same, so you can kind of just attribute it to that ad group. So it was a little messier than dynamic, but it still gives you a really good insight of what exactly is happening with that call extension. If somebody doesn't even hit your landing page and they call it off of their mobile, maybe they don't click, they just write it down, or they just see it and write it down and call it, you still get the attribution back to that ad group because that phone number is specifically assigned statically to that call extension. So here's another really good question for you, Angelo. How long does Ifbyphone lock down a number in the pool before it's released, and how do you calculate the number of pool numbers that are required?
Yep, it's a great question. And again, this goes back to the slide we talked about, things to ask your call tracking provider, your potential call tracking provider, this customizable session time. So by default, if you were to sign up for an Ifbyphone account and just start going without talking to anybody or anything, our session time is defaulted to 1 hour, 60 minutes. So every unique visitor that comes to the website would see their own phone number for 60 minutes. After that 60-minute time has elapsed, that number would go back to the bottom of the list in the pool and be eligible to be reshown at a later time whenever you started working through all the numbers in your pool. Now, if you know after running with Ifbyphone for 10 days, 15 days, that, you know what, everybody calls within 30 minutes. We can see when we display the number. We can see when they call, and we don't need to hold the numbers out for 60 minutes. We can customize that session time for you. If you need to extend it longer, same difference. We can extend that session time out for you for as long as you need to allow you to capture the other data, or the keyword level data that you're trying to capture. Now, the one thing that may or may not be obvious is however long we're holding out the phone numbers for every unique visitor on the site directly impacts how many phone numbers you need in the pool. So we calculate it based on the amount of unique visitors to your site within 1 hour. We have an algorithm on our side that we run through. We basically have a calculator that we built that sort of processes this for you. So when signing up with Ifbyphone, we ask you for the amount of unique visitors to your website from different sources that you want to track. So if you say Google AdWords and Microsoft Ad Center, I would say give me unique visits to your site in a normal month or a peak month from those 2 marketing channels on the paid side, and we would tell you then how many numbers you needed in your pool. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that was a great answer. So let's see. Someone was wanting to know, I think that this is a follow-up question to a question that we hadn't answered yet. And Angelo, I'm sorry to give you doubles in a row sometimes, but this is a good one for you.
Yep.
So they're wanting to know if we can speak to sites that contain multiple phone numbers. So if the site has 5 to 10 phone numbers, does that get cost prohibitive, or how should they handle that with their call tracking?
Sure. And again, there's a couple of different answers, and I hate to do this to everybody, but there's a lot of flexibility specifically with Ifbyphone, which is I'm trying to generalize as best I can, but my experience is really, in order to give you guys the best information, is limited to what I know about Ifbyphone can do. So I'm not trying to be super salesy, but at the same time, I'm trying to give you the best information I have. So the short answer is, yeah, it can be cost prohibitive. There is a cost associated with the amount of phone numbers you have. Let's not sugarcoat that. But the question really is, how badly do you need the information? How badly do you need the data? How much money are you spending on all these different marketing sources that you need to understand where the calls are coming from? So standard general implementation of multiple phone numbers on a page, I'm sorry, so there's a difference. There's the same phone number put on the page multiple times, and then there's different locations. So if, let's say I'm a franchise and I have 5 locations, and I want to do keyword level call tracking, but I have a nationwide campaign that I'm driving visitors to my website, and they're going to see all 5 locations on that page, right? That's the example I believe we're talking about. If you need to simply display the same phone number in the header and the footer and in the body, that's not cost prohibitive. It's the same single phone number being reused on the site. But in the event that you have 5 different call tracking numbers on a page at one time, it can kind of be cost prohibitive. Now, again, the way we implement this in the way that you would sort of customize the solution can be that if you're using geo-targeted campaigns, which is, you know, I think the norm. If you have 5 completely different locations, they're not all in, let's say, the New York area, the metropolitan area of New York, but you have one in New York, one in Chicago, one in LA, you would probably be running geo-targeted campaigns for those different areas, at which point when someone clicked on an ad that belonged to your New York campaign, they'd hit the page, and the only dynamic number that would load on the page would be the New York number. So it would show the main business phone number, the non-Ifbyphone number for all the other locations, because you know, and we know at Ifbyphone, that they came from the New York campaign versus the LA campaign versus the Chicago campaign. So there is a way to keep costs down on those numbers, but again, it just really depends on how your campaigns are being built and if they're geo-targeted or not. If they're all nationwide campaigns, then yeah, you kind of need to show 5 toll-free numbers for each location. I hope that helps.
Great. Yeah, no, I think that was a great answer. So there's a couple of questions that we didn't get to, and if you still have questions about it and we didn't answer your question, there were some questions that were similar, so I just kind of assumed that we probably answered them and answering some other ones. If you still have a question, feel free to reach out to us still over #PPC, and we'll try to get back to you at some point, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up. If we could just look at that last slide, we'll get you some more information, and we'll go ahead and wrap up. If you want to just go to the next slide, it'll be our last slide. So again, if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to us. So for Hannaford Marketing, that's marketing@hannafordmarketing.com. For Ifbyphone, that's S. Griffiths there. You can see the spelling at ifbyphone.com. So again, remember that you can get a free solutions blueprint from Hannaford Marketing for accounts greater than $20,000 a month per spend in ad spend. And those are super helpful, especially if you're gearing up for the holiday season and want some help making sure that you're really out there as much as you can be. You can also save $250 in Ifbyphone's call tracking. Here's the phone number listed, 877-975-8507 by December 1st, and sign up for their Interact package, and they'll waive the $250 startup fee. So just make sure you mention the PPC webinar. And you can also tweet us, like I said earlier, a hashtag ThinkPPC with your feedback or questions, and we'll make sure to get back to you over the next week or so. So thank you so much for everybody for attending. Thank you, Angelo, so much for all of your super awesome information about call tracking, and I hope that all of you gained a little something from call tracking, and please feel free to reach out if you still have questions.